Alicia walked quickly through the glass doors of Thompson Investments, holding her purse tightly against her side. It was her first real job in the city, and every step she took through that tall building felt like a small victory. She had worked hard for this moment. Growing up, she had promised herself she would make something of her life no matter how hard it got. Now here she was, a personal assistant to one of the most successful businessmen in town. The office was bright and busy. Phones rang. People hurried from desk to desk, and the sound of printers filled the air. Alicia took it all in with quiet excitement. She wanted to do everything right. Every task, every phone call, every note she took, it mattered to her. Her boss, Mr. Thompson, was a man everyone respected. He had built his company from nothing and was known for being sharp and demanding. He didn't smile often, but when he did, people said it meant something. Alicia had heard stories about him, how he could be tough but also fair. She hoped he would see that she was serious about her work. At first, she barely spoke to him. She focused on her job, organizing schedules, preparing documents, answering calls. He was polite but distant, the way powerful people often were. But over time, something changed. He started noticing her dedication. He saw how calm she stayed under pressure, how she never complained, how she treated everyone with kindness. One evening, she was still in the office long after everyone else had left. She was finishing up reports when Mr. Thompson walked out of his office. "You're still here?" he asked. She looked up a little nervous. "Just trying to make sure everything's ready for tomorrow, sir." He nodded slowly. "Most people would have gone home hours ago." "I don't mind," she said softly. "I like doing my work right." For the first time, he smiled. That's rare these days. From that evening on, they began to talk more. At first, it was about work. But soon the conversations turned personal, about life, dreams, and how lonely it could feel to chase success. Alicia listened more than she spoke. She wasn't trying to impress him. She was just being herself. Maybe that's what drew him closer. Weeks turned into months, and what started as a professional bond quietly grew into something else. They began having lunch together in his office. Sometimes he'd ask her opinion on business deals. Other times he'd simply ask about her life. She found herself smiling more, even laughing. It felt strange but also comforting. She had never expected someone like him to take an interest in her. Someone so powerful, so different from her world. And yet, when they were alone, he didn't feel like the man everyone feared. He was gentle, even kind. But deep down, Alicia knew this kind of closeness could be dangerous. People in the office whispered. Some looked at her differently. She tried to ignore it, tried to focus on her work, but she couldn't deny her feelings. She told herself that what they shared was real, that maybe, just maybe, he saw her heart and not just her face. One night after a company event, he offered to drive her home. It was raining hard and she hesitated, but he insisted. They talked quietly in the car. The world outside blurred under the rain, and in that moment everything felt fragile and uncertain. After that night, their connection deepened. But it had to stay a secret. He was a man with a public image and she was just his employee. Alicia didn't want to cause him trouble and he didn't want to lose his reputation. For a while, it worked. They lived in two worlds, one of business meetings and polite greetings and another of stolen moments and quiet understanding. Then, everything changed. Alicia had been feeling unwell for weeks. She thought it was stress or lack of sleep, but when she finally went to the doctor, the truth hit her like a storm. She was pregnant. She sat in her tiny apartment that night, staring at the test in her hands. Her heart raced. She didn't know what to do. She was scared, but also strangely calm. This was her life now, and she had to face it. The next day, she gathered her courage and went to his office. When she told him, he went completely silent. He didn't even look at her at first. "Alicia," he said finally, his voice low. "You can't be serious." She nodded, her hands trembling. "I'm keeping it." He stood up, walking toward the window. "Do you know what this could do to me? To my company?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't plan this. I just thought you should know." He turned to face her, his expression cold now. "This can't get out. You understand?" She looked at him, hoping for some sign of compassion. But there was none. The man she had trusted, the man she thought cared for her, was gone. He told her it would be best if she left the company. Said it was for her own good, that people were starting to talk. She knew it was a lie, but she didn't argue. She packed her things quietly, said goodbye to a few kind coworkers, and walked out of the building without looking back. That evening, she cried harder than she ever had. Not because of losing her job, but because she realized how little she had meant to him. She had believed in him, believed that he saw her as more than just someone beneath him. But power has a way of hiding the truth. Months passed and Alicia tried to rebuild her life. She found small jobs, typing work, cleaning offices, anything that would keep her and her unborn baby safe. She learned to stretch every dollar and smiled even when her heart was breaking. The pregnancy wasn't easy. There were nights when she was too sick to work and days when she could barely get out of bed. But she never gave up. Every time she felt her baby move, she reminded herself that she wasn't alone. One afternoon, she passed by the same tall building where she used to work. She stood across the street looking up at the glass windows. Somewhere inside, he was still living his life, powerful, respected, untouchable. She felt a wave of pain, but she turned away. She didn't need his world anymore. When her baby was finally born, Alicia cried again, but this time it was from joy. She held her son close, whispering promises into his tiny ear. She promised that he would never feel unwanted. She promised to give him everything she could: love, strength, and hope. She named him Daniel. Life after that was hard, but Alicia refused to break. She worked nights, sometimes 2 jobs, and carried Daniel wherever she went. He grew up watching his mother fight through exhaustion and still smile for him every morning. People around her admired her strength but never knew the whole story. She never spoke about the man who left her. She wanted her son to grow up free from bitterness. Years went by. The city changed. Alicia grew older, and the once sharp pain in her heart softened into quiet strength. Every time she saw her son succeed, in school, in sports, in kindness, she felt that her struggles had meaning. Some nights, she would take out a small box she kept hidden under her bed. Inside was an old photograph of Mr. Thompson and a short letter he once wrote her before things went wrong. She looked at it not with hate but with acceptance. She kept it not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that even from betrayal something beautiful had been born: her son. Meanwhile, in that same city, Mr. Thompson continued to grow richer. But despite the money, he never found real peace. He had built an empire but lost something he couldn't replace: a piece of his own soul. Sometimes when he passed by a woman who reminded him of Alicia, he'd look away quickly, as if haunted by his own memories. He didn't know that the child he had turned his back on would one day walk through the same office doors, not as a worker, but as a man who carried himself with quiet confidence, just like the woman who raised him. But that part of the story would come later. For now, Alicia sat by the window of her small apartment, watching her son sleep. The city lights glowed outside, and she whispered softly to herself, "Someday, you'll show the world who you are." She didn't know then that those words would come true, in ways she could never have imagined. Alicia's days started before the sun came up. She'd wake quietly, move around her small apartment, and make breakfast before heading out for work. Life had turned into a long stretch of early mornings and late nights, but she didn't complain. Every time she looked at her son's small face, she found a reason to keep going. Daniel was a curious child, full of questions about everything he saw. He liked sitting near the window, watching cars pass below, or asking his mother why stars didn't fall from the sky. Alicia always answered with a smile, even when she was too tired to think. She didn't want him to feel the weight she carried inside her. The neighborhood where they lived wasn't the safest. The walls of the building were cracked. The elevator often didn't work, and sometimes there were loud arguments in the hallway late at night. But Alicia focused on the good. She told her son that home wasn't about how big a place was, but about how much love lived inside it. Her days were a blur of hard work. She worked at a small cafe in the mornings and cleaned offices in the evenings. Some nights she returned home so tired she could barely stand. But Daniel always met her at the door with a drawing or a hug. Those small moments healed her. When Daniel was old enough to start school, Alicia worried about not being able to afford the fees, but she found a way. She cut back on meals for herself, walked instead of taking the bus, and took extra cleaning shifts. She made sure he had a uniform, notebooks, and lunch every day. Daniel was bright. His teachers noticed it too. He was quiet but observant, always listening carefully. He loved reading and solving puzzles, and he was kind to everyone, even the kids who made fun of him for wearing old clothes. One day, a teacher called Alicia after school. She feared something might be wrong, but when she arrived, the teacher smiled. "Your son is special," she said. "He's far ahead for his age. Have you thought about what he could do in the future?" Alicia blinked, unsure what to say. "I just want him to have a better life," she whispered. The teacher nodded. "Then keep doing what you're doing. He's going to make you proud." That night, Alicia walked home with Daniel holding his small hand. He told her about his day, about how he helped another kid with homework and how his teacher said he was smart. Alicia looked down at him, smiling softly. "You are smart," she said. "Smarter than you know. And one day you'll do great things." Daniel looked up. "Like what, Mama?" She thought for a moment. "Maybe you'll help people. Maybe you'll build something big. I don't know yet. But I know you'll make life better for someone," he grinned. "For you too, right?" Alicia laughed quietly. "Especially for me." Time moved fast after that. Years passed, and Daniel grew taller, sharper, more confident. He didn't have much, but he never complained. He learned to help around the house, washing dishes, doing laundry, even bringing his mother tea when she was too tired. He saw the sacrifices she made, even when she tried to hide them. When she skipped dinner, he pretended not to notice. When she forced a smile after long shifts, he smiled back, pretending everything was fine. But deep down, he promised himself something, that one day he would make sure she never had to work again. High school came, and with it, new challenges. Some kids still looked down on him because of his clothes or where he lived, but Daniel didn't let it get to him. He knew who he was. His mother had taught him that dignity didn't come from money, but from how you treated people. He started working part-time at a bookstore after school. The owner, an older man with a kind face, took a liking to him. "You remind me of myself when I was your age," he said one day. "You've got that fire in your eyes." Daniel smiled. "I just want to help my mom." "Good reason," the man said. "The best one there is." The job helped pay some bills and even allowed Daniel to buy a small birthday gift for his mother, a simple silver bracelet. She wore it every day, saying it made her feel rich already. When Daniel graduated from high school, the whole neighborhood seemed to cheer for him. He was the first kid from that building to get a scholarship to a good university. Alicia cried so much that day she could barely speak. "I told you, Mama," Daniel said, hugging her tight. "We're going to be okay." At university, life changed for him completely. The campus was huge, full of people from every background. At first, he felt out of place. Students drove cars, wore expensive clothes, and talked about vacations in places he had only seen in pictures. But Daniel didn't care. He was there to learn. He spent long hours in the library studying business and economics. He wanted to understand how money worked, how people built companies, created jobs, changed lives. Somewhere deep inside, he wanted to build something powerful too, not out of greed, but out of purpose. Every weekend, he took the bus home to see his mother. They would eat together, talk for hours, and laugh about small things. Alicia always said she didn't need anything else in life as long as she could see him happy. During his second year, Daniel joined a business competition. He created a project that focused on helping small communities grow their own businesses. His idea won first place, and a local investor offered to fund it. That was the start of something big. He built a small company with a few friends, focusing on helping small shops expand using simple technology. It started small, but within a few years it began to grow fast. People trusted him because he was honest and he treated everyone, clients, workers, partners, with respect. By the time he turned 24, Daniel had become a well-known name in his field. Newspapers wrote about him as the young man who built hope from nothing. But no one knew the story behind it. The nights his mother went hungry, the years of quiet struggle. He carried all that inside him like a hidden fire. One evening, after returning from a business trip, Daniel found his mother sitting quietly on the couch. She looked tired, paler than usual. When he asked if she was okay, she smiled weakly and said it was just age catching up. But Daniel wasn't convinced. He made her promise to visit a doctor, though she kept saying she was fine. That night, while she was asleep, he went to clean her small desk. In one of the drawers, he found an old box. Inside was a letter, yellowed with age, and a photograph of a much younger Alicia, standing beside a man in a suit. Daniel picked up the photo. The man's face looked familiar somehow, his confident smile, his expensive watch. Then he looked at the name printed on the letter, Thompson Investments. He froze. He read the letter once, then again, as his chest grew heavy. The words were polite but distant, the kind of letter written to end something without care. He didn't need to ask who the man was. He understood everything. All those years his mother had never said a word. She had carried that secret alone, choosing to protect him from the truth. He sat there for a long time, staring at the letter, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. But when he looked at his mother sleeping peacefully, his anger faded. He realized that she had built her strength not from hate but from love. She had given him everything she could without bitterness. That was what made her truly powerful. The next morning, Daniel decided something quietly. He didn't tell her what he had found. He just kissed her forehead and went to work. He couldn't change the past, but he could face it. He could look that man in the eye, not as a lost child, but as a man who had made his own path. Weeks later, he arranged a business meeting with Thompson Investments. His company had grown large enough now that he didn't need introductions. People wanted to work with him. When the meeting date was set, Daniel looked out his window, remembering the small apartment, the late nights, the tears his mother thought he never saw. He whispered softly, "It's time, Mama." And with that, he prepared to walk into the same world that once threw his mother out, not for revenge, but for something much deeper. The morning Daniel was supposed to meet the people from Thompson Investments, he woke up before sunrise. He couldn't sleep much the night before. His thoughts kept circling around his mother, the letter, and the man whose name had followed him silently all these years. He made himself a cup of coffee and sat near the window. The city outside was slowly coming to life, with cars moving and the soft hum of morning traffic. He stared at the skyline and thought about how far he had come, from that small, cracked apartment to this office in the heart of the city. His mother had taught him everything about strength without ever using the word. She never said she was strong, but she showed it in every little thing she did. And now, as he looked at his own reflection in the glass, he could see her in himself, in the quiet way he breathed through uncertainty, in the calmness he carried even when his heart was heavy. He straightened his tie and smiled faintly. "I'll make you proud, Mama," he whispered. When he arrived at the tall glass building where the meeting was to be held, he paused at the entrance. He had seen this building before, not in person, but in the old photograph from the letter. He recognized the logo, the same one that had been printed at the top of that piece of paper from decades ago. Walking through the front doors, Daniel felt something strange, and not fear, but a deep, quiet sense of closure starting to take shape. He had imagined this moment in his mind, but now that he was here, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like destiny catching up. The receptionist smiled politely. "Good morning, sir. You must be Mr. Daniel Carter, right?" "Yes," he said calmly. "I'm here for the meeting with Mr. Thompson's team." "Of course. They're expecting you. Please go right in." As he stepped into the elevator, he pressed the top floor button. The ride was silent except for the soft sound of music playing overhead. He looked at his reflection in the shiny elevator door, confident, composed, successful. Everything his mother had dreamed he would be. But behind that calm expression, his mind was filled with questions. What kind of man was his father now? Did he ever regret what he did? Did he even remember her? The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. He stepped out into a wide hallway lined with glass offices. Everything looked spotless and expensive, a symbol of power and control. He walked toward the meeting room where an assistant greeted him. "Mr. Thompson will join you shortly," she said. He nodded and took a seat. The room was bright, with a large window overlooking the city. On the wall hung photographs of Mr. Thompson shaking hands with politicians and business leaders. The man seemed to be everywhere, still powerful, still admired. Daniel looked around slowly. It was strange to think that his mother had once walked these same halls, maybe nervous and hopeful, never knowing how much her life would change because of this place. A few minutes later, the door opened and Mr. Thompson walked in. He looked older than in the photograph. His hair was gray now and his shoulders carried the quiet heaviness of time. But his presence was still commanding. "Mr. Carter," he said warmly, extending his hand. I've heard good things about your company. It's impressive what you've built at such a young age. Daniel stood, shook his hand, and gave a polite smile. Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here. Please sit, Thompson said, motioning toward the chairs. Let's talk business. For the next half hour, they discussed partnerships, projects, and potential investments. Daniel spoke with confidence, presenting ideas clearly, while Thompson listened carefully, occasionally nodding in approval. But underneath the calm conversation, Daniel's heart was beating faster. He kept watching the man in front of him, wondering how someone could live for so long without acknowledging such a deep mistake. At one point, Thompson leaned back and smiled. You remind me of someone, he said, almost to himself. You have the same quiet determination? I can't quite place who it is, though. Daniel felt a lump in his throat but stayed composed. Maybe you met my mother once, he said softly. Thompson looked surprised. Your mother? Yes, Daniel said, meeting his eyes. She used to work here. A long time ago. The older man frowned slightly, trying to recall. We've had many employees over the years. Daniel reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small envelope. He slid it across the table. Maybe this will help you remember. Thompson hesitated, then picked it up and looked inside. His hand froze when he saw the photograph. For a moment, he didn't move. The color drained from his face. He looked up slowly, his eyes wide. Alicia, he whispered. Daniel didn't say anything. The silence filled the room like heavy air. Thompson put the photograph down, his voice trembling slightly. She worked for me. But that was years ago. How did you? Daniel leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. I'm her son. The words hung in the air. Thompson blinked as if trying to make sense of them. He looked at Daniel again, really looked, and suddenly the resemblance became clear. The shape of his eyes, the way his jaw tightened when he was silent. My God, Thompson muttered. All these years? Daniel nodded slowly. 24 years. Thompson's hands shook slightly as he sat back. I didn't know, he said weakly. She never told me. She did, Daniel replied quietly. You just didn't want to listen. Thompson stared at him, his expression breaking apart. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the city outside seemed distant, like a world far away from this moment. Finally, Thompson said in a low voice, I was a coward back then. I made a mistake that I can never undo. Daniel looked at him steadily. She suffered because of it. She lost her job, her reputation, everything. But she never said a single bad word about you. She just kept going. She raised me on her own, worked herself to exhaustion, and still taught me to be kind. Thompson lowered his head, his eyes glistening. She was the best person I ever knew. Yes, Daniel said. And you threw her away like she was nothing. The room went silent again. Thompson's breathing grew shallow. He looked years older than when he had walked in. I don't expect you to forgive me, Thompson said finally. I can't even forgive myself. I've lived with that guilt every day. Daniel took a deep breath. I didn't come here for revenge. I came here because I wanted to see what kind of man could do something like that, and still sleep at night. Thompson swallowed hard. I couldn't sleep. Not really. Not for a long time. Daniel stood up slowly. You built this empire, but at what cost? My mother had nothing, yet she lived with more honor than most people I've ever met. Thompson nodded weakly. You're right. She was extraordinary. Daniel looked out the window for a moment. The city below seemed endless, filled with people chasing power, money, and control. He thought about his mother's words, that love and forgiveness were stronger than hate. When he turned back, his voice was softer. She's still alive, he said. If you really mean what you say, you should tell her yourself. Thompson's eyes widened slightly. She'd see me? Daniel hesitated. I don't know. But she deserves to hear your apology in person. Thompson nodded slowly, tears beginning to form. If she'll let me. Daniel gathered his things and prepared to leave. As he reached the door, Thompson's voice stopped him. Daniel, he said quietly. Thank you for coming. You didn't have to. Daniel looked back. Maybe I did. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to face what's behind you. He walked out of the room, leaving the older man sitting there in silence, holding the photograph of a woman he once loved and abandoned. As Daniel stepped outside, the cool air hit his face. The city noise surrounded him again, cars honking, people rushing by. But his mind was somewhere else. He didn't feel anger anymore. He felt lighter, as if a weight he didn't know he carried had finally been lifted. When he got home that evening, his mother was waiting for him. She asked how his meeting went. He smiled softly and said, "It went the way it needed to." She nodded, trusting him completely. Later that night, as she drifted off to sleep, Daniel sat by her side, holding her hand gently. He looked at her tired face, the lines of time and strength etched deep into her skin. He whispered, "He remembers you, Mama." She stirred slightly but didn't wake. A peaceful expression crossed her face, and Daniel knew that soon, one way or another, the past would find its peace. Daniel woke up early, before the city was fully alive. He brewed his coffee slowly, taking in the quiet morning. Even though he had faced the man who had caused so much pain in his mother's life, the truth hadn't yet been told to Alicia herself. Daniel knew that meeting was coming soon, the day his mother would see the man who had abandoned her, but he also knew it had to be handled carefully. She was fragile now, and her heart deserved protection. After breakfast, he checked his schedule and prepared himself. This meeting wasn't about business. It was about closure, about facing a truth that had been buried for decades. He practiced the words he might say, but he knew he couldn't predict her reaction. Alicia was a strong woman, but emotions ran deep, and Daniel didn't want to push her too far. Finally, the time came. Daniel called Mr. Thompson and told him that Alicia would meet him today, but only if he promised to be honest, gentle, and prepared to hear whatever she needed to say. Thompson agreed immediately, the urgency in his voice revealing the years of guilt he had carried. Daniel arrived at Alicia's apartment first. He found her in the kitchen, humming softly as she made breakfast. Her movements were slower than they used to be, but there was a quiet grace in everything she did. When she saw him, she smiled tiredly, and Daniel felt a mix of love and sadness swell in his chest. "Everything ready?" she asked, wiping her hands on a towel. Daniel nodded. "Yes, Mama, today you'll meet him. And you can say whatever you need to say." She paused, her eyes searching his face. "I've lived with this pain for a long time," she said softly. "I don't know if I'm ready to face him." "You are," Daniel said firmly, yet gently. "But I won't force you. You only do this if you want to." Alicia sighed and nodded. She had always trusted Daniel's judgment, and seeing him so confident and composed made her feel stronger than she had in years. They left together, taking a cab downtown. Alicia stared out the window, watching the city she had once walked through as a young woman, hopeful and naive. Memories came rushing back, the long days at Thompson Investments, the fear when she found out she was pregnant, the heartbreak of losing her job. She felt the pain again, but this time it was tempered by the knowledge that she had survived. When they arrived at the building, Daniel led her to the elevator. The doors closed and Alicia gripped the handrail tightly. Daniel kept his hand gently on her back, a silent reassurance. The elevator opened onto the office floor. Thompson was waiting, standing awkwardly near a large window overlooking the city. He looked older, his shoulders bent slightly, but his eyes were full of emotion as they landed on Alicia. "Please, have a seat," he said, his voice shaking. Alicia took a deep breath and sat down, folding her hands in her lap. Daniel stood beside her, silent and steady. He watched her, knowing this was her moment to face a truth she had long buried. Thompson swallowed hard. "Alicia," he said, his voice low, I don't know where to begin. I've lived with regret for so many years, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need to tell you I'm truly sorry for what I did. For firing you, for everything, for abandoning you." Alicia's eyes didn't leave his face. She listened quietly, her heart beating fast. She had imagined this moment countless times, but hearing it now, she wasn't sure what to feel. Anger? Relief? Sadness? It all swirled inside her. Thompson continued, "I was scared. I was selfish. I thought about my reputation, my wealth, and I didn't think about you, or the child you were carrying. I was wrong. I have been wrong for a lifetime." Alicia's lips pressed together. She wanted to say something, but no words came immediately. She thought about all the nights she cried alone, the struggles she had faced raising Daniel, the moments she had wished for a little help. And yet, as she looked at him, she realized that words could not undo the past. Daniel stepped forward slightly. "Mama," he said softly, "it's your choice what to do. You don't have to forgive him, but you can decide how this ends." Alicia looked at her son, seeing the man he had become, She saw his calm strength, his gentle heart, and the determination he carried. She felt proud, not because of his achievements alone, but because of the way he had faced the world, the way he had chosen integrity over bitterness. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "You caused a lot of pain," she said to Thompson. "But I have survived. I raised my son. I worked hard every day to make sure he had a better life than I did. And I did it without hatred." Thompson's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your words," he said. "You don't," Alicia admitted. "But this isn't about what you deserve. It's about what I choose to do. I choose to let go of the anger. I choose to live my life fully, not trapped in the past." The room was silent for a long moment. Thompson's hands trembled slightly, and he looked as if he were about to speak again, but Alicia held up her hand gently. "You need to understand," she continued. "I forgive you, not for you, but for me. So I can move forward." Tears streamed down Thompson's face. He looked at her, speechless. It was the first time in years that someone had truly faced him with honesty and compassion. He had expected anger, yelling, maybe hatred, but instead he was met with dignity and strength. Daniel felt a quiet relief wash over him. He had feared his mother's anger, but instead she had shown him something more powerful: the ability to rise above pain and take control of her own story. Thompson finally managed to speak. "I am so sorry, Alicia. I have no words to make this right, but I promise to honor you in any way I can." Alicia nodded slowly. Actions speak louder than words. If you truly want to honor what was lost, you can help others who are struggling like I did. Make a difference now, not just apologize. He nodded, understanding. "I will. I promise." For the first time in decades, Alicia felt a sense of closure. The anger she had carried for so many years had softened, replaced by quiet strength and forgiveness. She realized that facing the man who had hurt her didn't weaken her. It strengthened her. She was free from the shadow of the past. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder gently. "It's done, Mama, you're free." She smiled softly at him. "We're free," she said. And in that moment, she truly believed it. After a few more quiet words, the meeting ended. Thompson left the room, his shoulders slumped but his heart heavy with awareness. He had been given a rare gift, a chance to see the consequences of his actions and understand the real strength of the woman he had wronged. As Daniel and Alicia walked out of the building, the city seemed brighter. The streets were the same, the noise the same, but something inside them had shifted. The weight of the past was no longer a burden. It was a story they had faced and overcome together. They took a cab back to their small apartment. Alicia looked out the window as the city passed by, the lights reflecting in her eyes. She thought about the years of struggle, the nights of loneliness, and the moments of quiet triumph. She thought about how far she had come and how much she had given to ensure Daniel could grow strong and confident. When they arrived home, Alicia sat down, exhausted but content. Daniel joined her, placing a hand over hers. "You've always been strong, Mama," he said. "And now the world knows it too." She smiled, tears forming again, but this time from relief and pride, not sorrow. "I only did what I had to do. But I'm proud of you, Daniel. You turned all of our struggles into something beautiful." Daniel leaned back, feeling a sense of calm he hadn't felt in years. He had faced the past, seen the man who had caused so much pain, and watched his mother rise above it. And through it all, he realized that strength and forgiveness could create a life far richer than money or power ever could. That night, they sat together, talking quietly about small things, memories, dreams, and future plans. There was no bitterness, no anger, only a deep understanding that life was fragile but also full of hope. Alicia held her son's hand, feeling the warmth and love that had always been her greatest reward. She whispered softly, "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, Mama, and we're just getting started." And in that moment, both of them knew the past could no longer hurt them. The choices they had made, the love they had shared, and the strength they had carried would guide them into a future brighter than they had ever imagined. The next days would bring new challenges, but Alicia and Daniel faced them together, knowing that forgiveness and love had already conquered what anger and fear could not. And somewhere deep in the city, Mr. Thompson began to think of ways to make amends, to honor the woman whose strength had changed everything. For the first time in a long time, the past had found its balance. and the future looked full of promise. The days after Alicia met Mr. Thompson were quiet but full of reflection. Life had returned to its normal rhythm, yet everything felt lighter, freer. Alicia found herself smiling more, walking taller and speaking with a calm confidence she hadn't felt in years. She and Daniel shared small routines, morning coffee together, long walks in the park, quiet evenings filled with conversation and laughter. One morning, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a cup of coffee. Alicia was preparing breakfast, humming softly, the sunlight streaming through the small window. Daniel looked up at her. "Mama," he said, "I've been thinking. We face the past, but what about the future? I don't want you to struggle anymore. I want to make sure you never have to worry again." Alicia shook her head gently. "I've never needed much, Daniel. I only needed you." "I know, Mama," Daniel said, smiling, "but now it's time to take care of you. You've given everything for me. Let me give something back." She hesitated. She had spent her life being independent, surviving on her own, and pride had been her shield. Accepting help now felt strange, almost foreign. But when she looked at her son, she saw the same determination she had instilled in him. And she realized he wasn't asking for her permission. He was offering her a gift she had earned through decades of sacrifice. The next day, Daniel began making plans. He used his growing company not just to expand, but to create opportunities for women who were struggling like his mother once had. Alicia helped him in small ways, offering advice and insights from her own life experience. Together they found a rhythm, a partnership built not on business alone but on trust, love, and shared history. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson hadn't forgotten the encounter. Every day he thought about Alicia, about what he had lost, and about the life that might have been. Guilt still weighed heavily on him, but he also felt a strange sense of hope. For the first time, he realized that remorse alone wasn't enough. He had to act, to make amends in a meaningful way. He began quietly. He set up a small foundation for single mothers, offering scholarships and support to women who were working tirelessly to give their children a better life. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was something tangible, something that could honor Alicia's resilience without intruding on her life. He wanted to make sure that no one else would have to endure what she had endured. Alicia was unaware of these efforts at first. She noticed small changes in the community, women getting scholarships, children attending schools they couldn't have before, families finding support. And while she didn't know who had started it, she felt a quiet sense of hope. The world was changing, and maybe, just maybe, the past could serve a purpose beyond pain. One afternoon, Daniel came home with news. He had secured a major investment for his company, one that would allow him to expand even further and hire dozens of people who needed jobs. He sat across from Alicia at the small kitchen table, excitement in his eyes. "This is incredible, Daniel," she said, pride swelling in her chest. "You've worked so hard. I'm proud of you." He reached across the table, taking her hands gently. "I didn't do it alone, Mama. You taught me everything I know, resilience, kindness, and strength. You carried us both when the world tried to push us down." Alicia smiled softly, her eyes glistening with tears. "I only did what I had to do," she whispered. "But seeing you now, I know it was worth everything." Life continued in this way, quiet victories, small joys, and the occasional reminder of the past. But the weight of resentment had lifted. Alicia and Daniel had built a life filled with meaning, one where love and forgiveness shaped their every decision. Years passed, and Daniel's company grew into a reputable business. No, not just for its success, but for the way it treated people. He always remembered the lessons his mother taught him, that true power wasn't about wealth or influence, but about lifting others up, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, and always acting with integrity. One day Alicia received a letter in the mail. She opened it carefully, recognizing the familiar handwriting. It was from Mr. Thompson. The letter was short, simple, but heartfelt. He wrote about the foundation he had started, the scholarships he was funding, and his ongoing commitment to helping women like her. At the bottom, he had written, "I am still deeply sorry for the pain I caused. Your forgiveness changed my life. Thank you for showing me the strength of your heart." Alicia read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in her drawer. She felt a quiet sense of peace. The past had finally found its place. It no longer had the power to hurt her or her son. Instead, it had become a story of strength, endurance, and the triumph of love over bitterness. Daniel walked in as she was setting the letter down. "What's that?" he asked. She smiled. "Just a reminder that even the hardest past can lead to something good." He nodded, understanding without needing more words. They had lived through hardship, faced betrayal, and emerged stronger. The lessons they carried weren't just about survival. They were about building a life of purpose, about using pain as a guide, not a chain. Months later, Alicia and Daniel attended a community event celebrating the achievements of women who had overcome obstacles. Daniel gave a speech about opportunity, hope, and the importance of supporting those who worked hard every day to build a better life. Alicia sat in the front row, holding his hand. She felt a swell of pride, not just for the words he spoke, but for the man he had become. After the event, a woman approached them quietly, holding a scholarship acceptance letter. "I don't know who started this," she said softly, "but it changed my life. Thank you." Alicia looked at her, a gentle smile on her face. "Someone had to care," she said simply. Later that evening, Daniel and Alicia returned home. They sat together on the couch, quiet now, the city lights glowing outside their window. Daniel looked at his mother, her face showing the soft lines of years spent giving and loving, and he realized how much she had shaped him. Every choice, every sacrifice, every tear, it had all led to this moment of peace. "Mama," he said softly, "do you ever think about him?" Alicia's eyes flickered, but she remained calm. "I do," she admitted. "But I don't let it hurt me anymore. The past is behind us. What matters is now, what we do today, and how we live the rest of our lives." Daniel nodded. "I'm glad you taught me that, because it's not just about surviving. It's about living fully." She smiled, her eyes misty. "Exactly. And you, Daniel, are proof that love and perseverance can change everything." Years continued to pass, and Daniel's company thrived, always staying true to the values his mother had instilled. Alicia grew older, but she was no longer defined by the struggles of her past. She spent her days helping in the community, mentoring young women and sharing her story quietly, so that others could learn strength from her journey. One evening, as Daniel visited his mother at her favorite bench in the small park near their apartment, they watched the sunset together. Alicia leaned back, breathing deeply. "You know, Daniel," she said, "when I was young, I never imagined a life like this. I thought the world would always be against us. But look at us now. We built something better, something stronger." Daniel smiled, looking at the golden sky. "We did. And we'll keep building, Mama. For ourselves, for others, for the world we want to live in." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm proud of you, Daniel. Proud of the man you've become. Proud of the life you've created." He took her hand, holding it tightly. "And I'm proud of you, Mama. Proud that you never gave up, even when everything seemed impossible." In that moment, the world seemed to stand still. The pain of the past, the struggles, the heartbreak, they were all behind them now. What remained was love, respect, and a shared understanding of how resilience could change lives. Alicia rested her head on Daniel's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his presence and the calm of knowing that their story had come full circle. The life she had fought so hard to build, the values she had instilled, and the love she had given freely had transformed not just her own world, but the world around them. Somewhere quietly, Mr. Thompson continued to honor the woman he had wronged, using the lessons he had learned to make the lives of others better. But for Alicia and Daniel, the future was theirs, and it was bright. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Alicia whispered softly, "We did it, Daniel. We made it through." Daniel hugged her gently, feeling the strength and love radiating from her. "Yes, Mama, we made it, and nothing can take this away from us." The city continued to hum with life around them, but inside their small world, there was peace. They had faced the past, forgiven, and created a future built on love, courage, and hope. And in that peace they knew the journey, all the struggle, all the pain, had been worth it. Because they had each other, and together, they had found the strength to turn a story of heartbreak into a story of triumph.